CNN's Jake Tapper confronted Representative Jasmine Crockett on air over her comments about Latino voters.
Crockett has been in the news this week, of course, after announcing she's running for Senate. Some of her critics brought up comments she made last year following the presidential election, where she appeared to suggest that some Latino voters who voted for Trump have a, quote, slave mentality. Tapper read that quote to her and gave the Texas Congresswoman a chance to clarify her comments.
Around 1 million Latino voters in Texas were voting for Trump. Do they all have slave mentality?
No, and that's not what that said at all, to be clear. It did not say that every Latino has that type of mentality.
No, but the ones that vote for people who believe in strong or Trump's immigration policies.
So I don't believe that the people that voted for Trump believe in what they're actually getting. That is number one. What Trump said is that he was going to kick out the bad guys. And that's what I was talking about.
Meanwhile, a report from News of the United States says Crockett actually received encouragement to run for Senate from an unlikely source, although it's maybe not that unlikely if you think about it. The report claims Republicans did want her to get in the race because they believe she'll be the easiest opponent to beat in the general election. It reads, the National Republican Senatorial Committee put out a poll in July with Crockett's name included, which showed her as the leading Democrat in a hypothetical matchup. The fact that Crockett was included in the poll, no accident. The Republican efforts, of course, didn't stop there. What one source dubbed an AstroTurf recruitment process, the NRSC had allies that were seeding these new polls pretty aggressively into progressive digital spaces.
That report got mixed reactions online, with some more skeptical of the alleged Republican strategy than others. Maryland State Senator Justin Reddy says, quote, after years of Chuck Schumer doing stuff like this and the DGA, which I think is the Democratic Governors Association, with similar activity, hard to be too critical here. Pretty smart move by NRSC. But former California Assemblyman Sebastian Ridley Thomas says she can win. Race won't be easy for Republicans.
I mean, she can win. It's not
possible.
Out of the realm of things that could happen. I think she would have a much more difficult general election against the Republican. It kind of depends who the Republican is. It could be the incumbent, John Cornyn, who I think would be favored to win a general election. He's up against a primary challenge from Ken Paxton, who's a much more scandal-ridden figure, though very popular among MAGA. It could be that kind of Carrie Lake effect going on, very much so. I think she'd be a very flawed general election candidate, so I see why the Republicans want her. This is fair game, I agree, because Democrats have done the same thing to boost up. There was that Peter Meyer, who was a Trump-critical Republican in Michigan, who I actually quite liked, who lost a primary against a much more kind of out there, farther right candidate, who then went on to lose the general in this kind of close district. That happened last time in 2020, maybe it happened in 2022 or 2024. So that kind of thing goes on.
It does go on. One thing I would say just as a general principle is it's pretty risky for one party to try to decide who the beatable candidate of the other party is.
That is true.
They have often got those calculations wrong.
Hillary Clinton. She wanted to run against Donald Trump.
Right, exactly.
See how that turned out.
She thought she'd be safe enough. I mean, way back, Democrats thought that Ronald Reagan was too extreme or too right-wing to win the presidency. And
49 states. He won 49 states.
Turned out terribly well. I'm talking of Hillary Clinton. I mean, the battle between her and Obama in the 2008 primary was largely her people trying to say, oh, Obama's certain to lose in the general election, vote for me. And, you know, that was also wrong. So all of that is a problem. And as far as Republican attitudes or critics' attitudes to Crockett are concerned, look, I think any Democrat has an uphill battle to win in Texas. Yeah. It's a state that Democrats have targeted for a long time, and they haven't carried it in a statewide election for years. And Crockett, yeah, there are issues about whether she could, you know, expand the coalition. Some of the things she says, though, I think get mocked or criticized unfairly, like this thing about slave mentality. I mean, that is a thing that exists, you know? I mean, the existence of so-called colorism in the black community, which is the perceived desirability among some black people for lighter complexions. I mean, that is very entangled with sort of self...
Well, I'm not going to clutch my pearls, but is she saying that people... I mean, I just don't think it's a winning argument with minorities or anyone else, that you don't really know what you're voting for, and if you're voting for this, you have like, you know, some generational trauma or PTSD, or you're lusting for more control, the kind we had, or that voting for Republicans is like putting, you know, the slavers back in who were associated with the Democratic Party historically anyway. It's a silly...
that's a quite distant history at this point.
Well, exactly. That's why it's not a slave mentality to want...
But in that interview with Tapper, though, she was distinguishing between making that observation about some people and saying that that wasn't why every Latino, a million Latinos in Texas voted for that. Well, she's saying that she meant it in one way about a certain sliver, and she meant that other people voted for Trump because thinking they were getting something other than they're getting. I think what she's really getting at is the idea that Trump would go after like violent criminal migrants as opposed to just this much wider dragnet.
Well, she is... Look, I think Democrats have an unusually strong potential candidate in James Tallarico, who's the other person in that race. He's done a lot of things successfully from a media standpoint. I do think he's someone who could possibly have some crossover appeal or win back some of the people that Trump has lost. And so blowing it on Crockett seems like an especially bad choice, given that that's who the alternative is. But that's the Democrats' a choice to make. Also, to go to, you know, what Jake Tapper did grill her here. Again, the idea that CNN is like always going too easy on Democrats. Is not. Kaylin Collins grilled her on her idiotic comments about who Jeffrey Epstein was donating to.
Yeah,
the idea that they're not fair to, or that they're too harsh to Republicans and never say anything. But maybe that was true in an era of CNN under Zucker, where it manifested some, or it had no Trump sympathetic voices on the channel whatsoever. It just is not characteristic of it now. The news outlet he's thinking of is MS Now. He's always madder at CNN than that one, but
he is always mad. I mean, I would also defend MS Now.
Well, I would defend anyone's right. I would defend Fox News and Newsmax.
I mean,
they don't have to be favorable to the president.
But just briefly on the Crockett thing, while I think that much of the criticism of her is unfair and has racial or class-based elements, the thing that you're talking about, the CNN Caitlin Collins interview, was not a good moment for Crockett, because she had gone and said, "Oh, you got donations from a Jeffrey Epstein," and it was disingenuous. It wasn't the Jeffrey Epstein.
We believe in, we want empowerment here. I want to give her all the opportunities she wants to speak more and express her views and opine on topics.
Maybe she'll come on right.
I yield the floor to her.
Well, I
go on for as long as she wants.
I think
speak and be heard.
My basic view is she is, I think, a more effective advocate for herself and her views than you think she is. So perhaps she will come on and talk to both of us, and we can see who's right.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Fantastic. Meanwhile, Times New Roman is returning as the State Department's official communications font. Big story there. We'll tell you more next.